Christina Clark, and I'm the Operations Branch Chief for the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. Thank you for joining us. It is my pleasure today to engage with you and to hear questions and feedback related to this first ever federally funded water assistance program. Before we start, I also want to give a special thank you to our panelists who will be joining us today. And we have representatives from Kentucky, Ohio, Oregon, and the Pueblo of Zuni, and they'll be speaking a little later in the session about their experiences working with Lywop. So for me, I've been working with Lywop since its inception just about a year and a half ago. And prior to joining Lywop, I had little exposure to the water services landscape in this country, other than being a customer who paid a regular bill. What I have learned since launching Lywop is that the water landscape in this country is vast and complex. There are over 50,000 water service providers across the country, some of whom serve households across multiple states, and others who serve small communities with as few as 20 connections. Each and every one of you are critical to ensuring that individuals and families that you serve have access to essential water and wastewater services, which are the foundation for maintaining safe and healthy living conditions. Therefore, as water service providers, you all play a very important role in making Lywop a successful program. And building partnerships with each and every one of you is important to making Lywop work. So as we will discuss today, the purpose of Lywop is to support households in maintaining access to water and wastewater services, which is done through bill payment assistance. But Lywop also supports the water service providers by helping you to recoup revenue and to avoid shutoffs. So for those of you that are just learning about Lywop, I hope we're able to encourage you to follow up and engage with those that are implementing Lywop in your service area. And for those of you that have questions, I hope we're able to answer those questions for you today. And lastly, for those of you that are participating in Lywop, I want to thank you for becoming a part of this safety net for the customers that you serve. Before turning it over to my colleagues, I want to go over some reminders for the presentation and some housekeeping points. And so the first is to let you know that you will all be on mute throughout the presentation. However, we have two functions. One is for questions and answers, and you'll see a Q&A box. Throughout the presentation, if you have questions for the presenters or panelists, I encourage you to enter those into the Q&A section of the Q&A box. And at the end, we will go through those and provide an opportunity for those questions to be asked to the panelists, and they'll provide live response. The other function that you'll see where you can enter comments is the chat box. And in the chat box, I'd encourage you to, if you want to introduce yourself, if you want to put your name and where you're from or the organization that you represent, that would be a great place to put that. And so that's open for everyone to see. We'll be able to see who's on the line. And as I mentioned, we'll go through the presentation, the panelists will speak, and at the end, there'll be an opportunity to read through any questions that you have. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Rachel Hammond, who is going to start the presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rachel Hammond, and I'm a program specialist with the Lywop team. We're very pleased to have the opportunity to engage with you all today, so thank you for attending. Quickly, I'll just go through our agenda. So first, you'll get an introduction to the program and a status update from myself. Then one of my colleagues, Mitch, will do a demo of our data dashboard, which is an online tool we use to share information and status updates on the program. Then we will jump into our panel discussion and Q&A, which will be the bulk of what we're doing here today. Then we'll open it up for Q&A from you all. And again, you can use either the chat or the Q&A function in Zoom to submit your questions as we go through the presentation. And then we'll just have some brief closing comments. So first, I'll jump in and tell you a little bit more about Lywop in case you are new to it. Lywop is an emergency water and wastewater program, and it was authorized in response to the COVID pandemic with a combined total of just over $1.1 billion for implementation. Lywop is a temporary program, and all funds must be obligated by September of 2023. There's currently no permanent authorization for Lywop, but as many of us, almost all of us know here, utility costs are steadily increasing, and this program addresses a permanent need. Lywop's purpose is to provide utility payment assistance to reduce rates and arrearages for low-income households. So again, as Christina mentioned at the beginning, we're talking about keeping the water on And in order to do that, LIHWAP allows for our grant recipients to make full payment of past due water bills to ensure that households are connected to their home services. We also allow for payments for households that are current on their bills to help them make them more affordable. In addition to supporting households, LIHWAP also supports water utilities by helping them recoup revenue lost due to wages and economic strain resulting from the pandemic. Last month, myself and a few other colleagues had the opportunity to attend the National Energy and Utility Affordability Coalition Conference. And I listened to a presentation where one water service provider shared that their past due accounts grew from around $20 million before the pandemic to almost $60 million as of this past June. Another water service provider shared that in the first 4 months of the pandemic in 2020, they went from having 2,000 customers behind on their bill to 12,000 customers behind on their bill. We all know that COVID-19 has had a significant impact on household incomes and water service provider finances, but those numbers really help drive home just how widespread the impact has been. And then finally, about the program for funding structure, our funding structure as written in the legislation requires that benefit payments are made directly to water utility providers on behalf of eligible households. This is critical to the planning and implementation of LIHWAP, and it's part of the reason why we invited you all here today to talk about this. And I'll go into a few more details on the next slide. And I just want to talk through some key program elements next, starting with the priorities for the program. As I mentioned, LIHWAP's intent is to maintain water services for low-income households. To emphasize the importance of continuity of water services, our office has established 3 priorities for the program. The first priority is restoring services for households that have been disconnected from services and do not have water and or wastewater service in their home. The second priority is to prevent disconnection from water or wastewater services for households that are at risk because they have past due balances on their account. And again, for these first 2 priority groups, LIHWAP benefits can cover the full amount of the past due bill that is needed to reconnect the household or prevent disconnection from water and wastewater services. The third and final priority for LIHWAP includes households that are current on their bill but are seeking assistance to reduce the total that they owe to help ensure that the bill is affordable for them to maintain their water and wastewater services. The second key program element that I want to talk about are the water service provider agreements, which we sometimes call vendor agreements. You may hear them referred to as that. And we really want to lean into the expertise and connections that we have here today when talking about it. So why are agreements needed? As mentioned, the grant recipients are required to make payments directly to water utility providers on behalf of eligible households. They cannot make a payment to a household who will then pay their bill. Vendor agreements define the terms and conditions for the work and communication between grant recipients and water utility providers who ultimately receive the LIHWAP benefit payment. Establishing these terms and conditions on behalf of households is for receiving and applying payments is required before water service providers can receive a LIHWAP benefit payment. There are a handful of things that can be included in these agreements. From the federal perspective, there is a requirement that grant recipients and water utilities agree on procedures and methods for confirming on a regular basis that water services have been restored or maintained after receiving payment on behalf of a household. And we also require that there is a process for confirming that payments have been properly applied in the payment amount received. Lastly, from the federal perspective, the water utility must ensure that they will not charge any fees for receiving or processing LIHWAP benefit payments on top of normal fees associated with paying a water bill. These are the federal requirements. Grant recipients also have discretion to tailor many of the policies and procedures related to LIHWAP implementation. Therefore, states, tribes, and territories may identify the need to include additional requirements specific to their codes, policies, or bylaws. For example, we've heard from New York that their terms and conditions include policies related to state requirements for monitoring and auditing organizations that receive payments from the state. And they also have additional requirements they've added related to confidentiality. OCS encourages grant recipients to be flexible when creating their vendor agreements and to consider the terms and conditions that might be able to be simplified where possible. However, we do acknowledge that LIHWAP grant recipients need to ensure that they are protecting the integrity of their own established policies and procedures and the households that they serve. We've seen a lot of successes related to establishing agreements with vendors and grant recipients, but we still have a long way to go in regards to partnering with water service providers, which is why we're holding events like the one here today to increase visibility into the program and encourage participation. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the current status. And I must start by acknowledging all of the hard work that's been put in across the country in standing up this program. On March 11th of this year, we celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the American Rescue Plan. And all of the hard work that's gone in the past year is because people who are dedicated to helping families that have been impacted by the pandemic. Currently, over $1 billion in LIHWAP funding has been released to 49 states, 5 territories, the District of Columbia, and 9 tribes that are implementing LIHWAP. As of March of this year, LIHWAP benefits have served 162,000 households, and this includes 95,000 households that have had services restored or had disconnection prevented. Our Q3 data, which covers April through June of this year, is coming due at the end of this month, and we will be updating our data dashboard with the new information. And Mitch will show you again how you can access that when I'm done with this presentation. Another thing that we have learned from our quarterly reports is that our grant recipients have entered into agreements with over 9,000 water service providers. That is a tremendous amount of work. But we also know that since there are over 50,000 water service providers across the country, that means there are still at least 40,000 out there that we're hoping to get connected to this program. We need participation from as many water service providers as possible to ensure equitable access to LIHWAP benefits, because a household cannot receive benefits if their water service provider is not participating in the program. Finally, we at OCS are doing a lot of work to continue outreach for the program. We are striving to address questions and reduce roadblocks by talking about what it takes to participate in the program and what is working. We have run radio ads. We've created a social media toolkit for our grant recipients. We've launched a Twitter account. We have recorded beneficiary spotlight videos featuring North Carolina and Iowa, where we spoke with representatives from both the state, the local level, and the households that received LIHWAP benefits. We are continuing to work on building and strengthening partnerships with people like you who are here today. And we also hold events such as quarterly stakeholder meetings to provide updates on the programs. Finally, I would like to share that we'll be hosting events for World Water Week, August 22nd through 26th next month. Each day will feature a different panel where we will be able to hear from a wide variety of grant recipients, water and wastewater experts, and environmental justice and climate change activists. We really hope you will join us for this event, and we can put a link to that in the chat so you can see how to sign up. It will all be virtual, so you can attend from anywhere. Finally, I just want to conclude by talking about a few opportunities to enhance LIHWAP outcomes, and I strongly encourage you all to participate in these opportunities as well. First, we at OCS want to lift up best practices. If something is working well, we want to share it with the world. This includes providing opportunities to connect with grant recipients and stakeholders. We would love to hear from you if you are working on LIHWAP and you think it's going well. As a new program, we know that we also need to continue to amplify our outreach. We have learned that stakeholders and households still may not be familiar with the availability of LIHWAP benefits or know what LIHWAP is. So continued outreach is critical for building awareness for households and for water service providers. So once again, thank you all for coming here today to learn more about our program. OCS is committed to supporting this work for outreach. And we encourage you all to use social media, flyers, word of mouth, and your networks to spread the word about LIHWAP as well. Next, we are working on building networks to increase our capacity and support administration for water utility benefit programs. We encourage you all here today to connect with water associations, municipal groups, and other water service providers to lay the foundation, because we know that the need for water utility support is only growing. And then finally, we want to all make sure that we are able to tell the story of Lywop. This includes gathering data and testimonials that demonstrate how important the program is. We want to be able to emphasize and share where Lywop has been successful, and also demonstrate where the program may have fallen short and where there is still need in our community. So we are working very hard here to share stories, and we would always love to hear from you about what it looks like from your end in the field. So with that, I will wrap up my presentation. If you have questions that have come up, please put them in the Q&A and we will answer them. And you can also save them and ask them during the panel later. And I will pass it over to Mitch now, who will walk you through our data dashboard.
Thank you, Rachel. Everyone, so I've just put a link into the chat. Hopefully everyone can see that. It has a link to the data dashboard. And I'm going to be walking through it as well, so you're welcome to follow along at home. But I am now sharing my screen. This is the homepage when you first click that link for the LIHWAP Data Dashboard. It has some information on Lywop. As you scroll down, it has a picture of lovely water spigot. And there's also links to the main Lywop site right here. There's a contact information at the very bottom. And then at the top of the screen, you'll see the navigation information. So for example, if you're interested in going to the glossary, the national spotlight, any of these tabs, you could click on them. Some of these are drop downs. So I'm going to be starting with the implementation information and starting with implementation, national snapshot, which you can see here has a bunch of data. So as Rachel mentioned, $1.1 billion in funding was granted. There are 50 states, which includes 49 states in the District of Columbia. We refer to DC as a state for the purposes of simplicity. There are 5 territories and 97 tribal areas which are receiving LIHWAP funding. So as you scroll down the page, you can zoom in and out, as I accidentally did with this map. It just shows the funding allocations. So you can see maybe Texas, California, New York, some of the more populous states are receiving more funding. And then if you click over here at the top, you can also see the tribal allocations for our tribe grant recipients. As you scroll down, there's also interactive tables. So if you're interested in comparing, say, all of New England or just the Northeast, different regions, you could click on the left and look at the funding amounts there, both by the American Rescue Plan Act and by the Consolidated Appropriations Act, or the total funded amount. Operational priorities, these are the 3 priority groups that Rachel referenced. So as these maps load in, sometimes it takes a second because my computer is slow, but you'll see information on the restoration of services, which states are doing that, which states are working on the prevention of disconnection, reduction of rates charged, and maybe any other operational priorities. So you can see that some of these states, if you go down below, there'll be information on what other means. This is also just sort of a breakout that shows, 98% of the states are looking at restoration of services. If you go over to the tribes, some of the data is a little different. And then we have another interactive table. If you'd like to go through, read about what other operational priorities are, look down the states, territories, and tribes. Let's see. For categorical eligibility, you can also look at these maps. There's information on what states, territories, and tribes. Oh, well, sometimes the computer runs out of memory. So there are maps, as you can imagine, showing the categorical eligibility, which is if, for example, a household receives LIHWAP, the home energy assistance, then that way they can be automatically considered eligible for LIHWAP, means tested veterans programs, SSI, SNAP, TANF. Here you go. So you can see all the maps. You can see what states are using what. And then at the bottom is a tab here for tribal grant recipients as well. As we move down the page, next up is income eligibility. Again, more maps showcasing which recipients at the state, territory, and tribe level are using which income eligibility guidelines, either the state median income the federal poverty guidelines, or a hybrid. So you can see here on the map for the states and territories, who is using what is mentioned on the side. Tribes, you can also see that information based on the dots of where the tribe is located. So I'll keep scrolling. We have target groups. So these are vulnerable populations, such as households with people with disabilities, or with children, senior citizens, and households with a high water burden. Okay, so I'm going to move on after the national snapshot. We have implementation plans, which is where you can see actual state level, what's in their plan, what they're planning to do or are already doing to implement LIHWAP in their jurisdiction. So here I already have Oregon pulled up, that you'll be hearing from them later today. You can see their minimum benefit right now is set at $100. Their maximum is around $1,000. They have about 900 water service providers located in the state. They're using the state median income for their income eligibility, and that threshold is set at 60%. Here you can see how much they're funded at. 75% of that is going to household benefits. You can see their target groups, operational priorities, and categorical eligibility. And as you scroll down the page, there's another interactive table. There's some glossary and legends, just general information that will be helpful for you to interpret this data. I'm going to move along now to implementation plan trends. So this is where you can look at two states, territories, or tribes side by side. So since we're going to be hearing from a couple states today, I called up Kentucky and Oregon. So Kentucky is on the left and Oregon is on the right. You can see their funding amounts, what percentage is going to household benefits, the information that we just saw in the previous tab, but just in a side-by-side format. So if you want to look at two states and how their implementation might compare. Now we're going to move into the quarterly reports snapshot. So as Rachel mentioned, this data is through March 31st. So those reports were due at the end of April, and then were interpreted. The data was collected and put into this dashboard. The next reports, which are go from April 1st through June 30th, those will be due next week at the end of July. And then we'll do the same thing where we'll put that data up on the website. So here you can see just a snapshot. This is the quarter 1 and 2, how many households served by each grant recipient. So you can see quarters 3 and 4 are coming soon because we don't have that data yet. But for example, if you hover over or click on a state, you can see the information about implementation. So for example, how many households they served in the Q2, the cumulative households served, whether they've accepted applications and when, and how many water service providers they have in the state. And then if we toggle over here, you can see that same information for the tribes. Down here at the bottom, there's a national snapshot showing broken down by the types of services provided. So you can see, as Rachel said, over 160,000 unduplicated households have been served, 9,000 water provider agreements, and 103 of our grant recipients are currently accepting applications, again, as of March 31st. Moving towards the end, we have the quarterly reports, so you can actually view the actual data from each quarterly report. Here I've pulled up the Pueblo of Zuni's report, so you can see from their Q2, they began on January 7th. So from January through March 31st, they served about 196 unduplicated households, and they have agreements with their one water provider. Actually, as we'll learn when we talk to them, they are the water provider, so that is why the number is 1. We'll move into the quarterly trends. So here you can compare the implementation plan on the left with the quarterly report on the right. So for example, you can see, they have this year is Kentucky, they have $18.7 million. They've, given benefits to 32,000 households, 150% of the federal poverty guidelines is their income threshold, etc. So this is other data in a flash, at a snapshot. And then finally, the last tab we have here is our national spotlight. As Rachel mentioned, we have some videos recorded with North Carolina and Iowa, talking with the administrators in those states, as well as some beneficiaries who are receiving LIHWAP services to restore their water services. And we're in the process of recording future videos and having other spotlights just to showcase the good work that LIHWAP is doing. So with that, that is a sort of brief overview of what the data dashboard looks like. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and the link is in the chat. If folks want to play around with that, they're welcome to. But I will now pass it on to my colleague, Mary Watts, who is going to be moderating the panel Q&A. Mary?
Great, thank you so much, Mitch. So now we're going to move on to our panel today, and we have 4 different grant recipients and some water service providers represented here today. So we have representation from Oregon, Ohio, Kentucky, and the Pueblo of Zuni. So we have a very diverse group, and they all have experience with rural water service providers or also have a lot of rural communities. So we're going to try to focus some of our commentary on that today. But I first want to just have the state grant recipient introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their program, what priority levels they're serving, the current number of households served that might be more up to date than our Q2 numbers on our dashboard, and a little bit about what the rural community is that they work with. And then if they could introduce if they have any water service providers on the line. So panel, if you want to join me on video now, and we will have Kentucky start.
All right, thank you for that. First, I want to say, Mitch, awesome job on the dashboard. I really loved it, and I can't wait to dive in to take a little closer look at those details. I'm one of those that really likes the data, so I want to say thank you for that. So my name is Jessica Hinkle. I work for the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services. I'm a branch manager, and Lywop is one of my many programs that I oversee. I want to say that Kentucky was so excited to get this opportunity to be part of the Water Assistance Program. We had such a need. We began in December of 2021, and as of June, we were out of funds. We served over 40,000 recipients, mostly to help those to not go into disconnection. We had benefit levels of either 400 or 800 for subsidy and crisis, so a person could get both of those benefits, up to $1,200. Let's see. I think that's just a pretty good overview from us. I did want to say that we do work with our 23 community action agencies, and I would have to say that was like one of the best things for us. We have a great partnership with them as they help us with LIHWAP and CSBG. And with that, we were able to communicate with them freely. We know them very well, and we were able to get this thing off the ground and running. I would have to say pretty seamlessly. I'm very proud of our state. Very excited that we had 18.7 million, but if we could double that or triple that, I say that we could just spend it right away. I just wish that that this thing would be permanent, just because I could see such a need. And so with me, I have today Chris Wilson, and she is our specialist for Lywop on the state side. And then I have Sarah, and she's representing the city of Lawrenceburg as far as the vendor side of the house.
Good afternoon. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off what Jessica was saying. To date, our average assistance for our subsidy benefits was around $305. And for the crisis benefit, the average assistance was around $248. Again, like she said, our funds was depleted in June, but every day we're still seeing that there's a big need for the assistance program. We get requests pretty much every day. You know, we've had a lot of success stories that's come in throughout the state from families who were struggling throughout this pandemic and, you know, just didn't know how they were going to make ends meet. And through the LIHWAP funding, you know, they were able to maintain their water. We did serve more of preventing disconnection services. You know, there was a lot of outreach that the agencies did. You know, they posted flyers, they did social media, public service announcements. They also, you know, identified families that could possibly be in need when they were applying for other programs and so forth. So, you know, we've got to give our agencies credit where credit's due. They did a lot of hard work and they got the word out there, and it was a very successful program here.
Thank you. Sarah, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'll definitely echo both Jessica and Chris. I'm Sarah Clark. I'm with Bluegrass Community Action Partnership, and we cover 9 counties in Kentucky. And through the LIHWAP program, I'd say that we've worked with over 25 water companies within our area and served about 2,200 households just in our 9 counties. And the LIHWAP program has definitely strengthened our relationship with our city and county governments and officials because of the water and the sewer need within their area and from their families. With that, we received a lot of feedback from the city of Lawrenceburg, which is in Anderson County within our area, and they were great in helping us promote the program, spreading the flyers, the PSAs to the clients and to their just within the community to get families in. And so we were able to really form a strong partnership with them through this.
Thank you. And I know we had Wendy on the line. It looks like she might have dropped off. So hopefully she can get back on and give us her introduction.
Sarah's able to cover for her today.
Perfect.
She had a work emergency she had to attend to. She did a private message to me.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Like I said, we have a great partnership. Wendy let me know.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. So is that everyone from Kentucky? All right. So let's open it up for Ohio. Megan, if you want to introduce your team.
Okay, so the team's just me today. So I'm Megan Meadows. I am the chief of the Community Services Division here at the Ohio Department of Development. So just to give you a framework, our division also handles the Home Energy Assistance Program. We handle the Weatherization Program, now the LIHWAP Program, and the Community Services Block Grant Program, and a couple of other programs as well are handled through our shop. And so in our state, we have over 1,200 water providers throughout the state. Some are in more rural areas, some are in more urban areas. Some are familiar with our services and our agency because they also participate. They provide like gas services. That's a combination utility bill. So we had some built-in relationships already, but in Ohio, it was really important for us to let folks know who we were and who we were planning to partner with at the local level to implement this program with us. So we did a lot of stakeholder conversations with water consortium groups and with just groups of local providers throughout the state to say, hey, what would be helpful as we're designing this Block Grant program to make it appropriate for what Ohioans need right now. And really what we heard is there were a lot of folks that were in disconnect, but there were a lot of folks that were also just behind on their bills because of moratoriums that were put into place. So water companies didn't issue disconnect notices, but folks were really behind on their bills. And so we sort of drafted our state plan here in Ohio based on the feedback that we received. And then once we posted that draft plan, we got even more feedback that we were able to make those adjustments to make the program really work at the local level. We have 51 providers throughout the state. Most of those, 47 of those, are community action agencies. And then we have other nonprofits that help serve some of the larger areas as well. So all of our customers receive assistance locally at the agency within their community. Another thing that we were able to do here in the state is leverage an online application process that we currently utilize for our energy assistance programs. And I haven't moved in a while. My light just turned off in my office. I'm sorry. But we were able to leverage that online application process form and do a build in that form. So it's really easy and streamlined for our customers to be able to apply for assistance so they can get help with their utilities, they can get help with their heating, they can get placed on a payment plan system that we have here in Ohio, and soon they'll also be able to apply for rental assistance here too. So, the LIHWAP program has been very impactful. We have served almost 9,000 households so far with that program. We have administered about half of Ohio's allocation. We did sort of break it out and started it in October did a year-long program, and then we'll do another sort of year-long program starting again. So households will be able to receive, one benefit during the first program year and then come back and receive a second benefit as well. And so, we really appreciate the funding stream. And so I encourage folks, if you have questions, figure out who in your state to talk to about participating in this program, because it is really beneficial for that end user and those households.
Thank you so much, Megan. All right, so we will now actually shift and go to our tribal representative. So we have Bernadette with the Pueblo of Zuni. Bernadette, can you join us? Great, thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Bernadette Pentia, and I am the Division Director for Education and Training for the Pueblo of Zuni. So we are located in New Mexico. Our Pueblo is rural and located in West Central New Mexico near the Arizona border. And so our population is approximately 12,000. We have about 3,000 houses or residences here. And we have close to 11,000 enrolled tribal members. And Zuni is one of the largest of the 19 pueblos here in New Mexico. And so the Pueblo of Zuni administers Lywop under a program that I also have direct oversight of, which is called the Zuni Education and Career Development Center, which is actually a 477 program. So for those that aren't familiar with 477, it's a law, Public Law 102-477, that allows tribes to consolidate their employment, education, training, and supportive services under a one-stop shop. So we have 9 programs, which include CANF, General Assistance, Job Placement Training, Tribal Scholarships, Child Care Development Fund, VIOA, Adopt Comprehensive, and Supplement to Youth. And we also administer the Home Energy Assistance Program. It's not part of 477, but it's another program that we administer. We're a small staff of 17. And we decided to apply for the Lywop funding because we already service or provide the home energy. So we figured it will help our community members because we've worked with our water department before. And so we knew there was a need for this funding to help our households. And so our priorities, of course, the number one priority was to help immediate restoration of water services to our households. And so the second one is providing payment to our water service providers, so that way our households will avoid disconnection. And the third one is providing rate reductions for the benefits. And so for the second and third quarter of the current fiscal year, we have assisted a total of 224 households. And out of that, 6% were for immediate restoration, 57% for arrearages, and 37% for rates reduction. And our Pueblo administers its own water services. So our provider is the Zuni Utility Department. Our representative was not able to join us today, but we've been working collaboratively to get the listing of those that were disconnected and who was arrears, because they did place a moratorium midway through the start of the pandemic. And so that those arrears were building up. So we were able to, and then they stopped the moratorium right before we launched the LIHWAP program in January. So they helped us do outreach and provided those flyers to their customers. So we've been able to help them generate their revenue for the outstanding bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. And now we will ask Joy from Oregon. And I know you're on the phone, but I think you can unmute yourself, and if you can describe your program and introduce items around your service providers, that would be great.
Thank you very much. My name is Joy Aldrich, and I work for Oregon Housing Community Services. I am the LIHWAP Program Analyst for the state of Oregon. We have 17 sub-grantees, community action agencies, who provide services throughout the state for us. And because they implement the low-income household energy assistance program, home energy assistance program, as well as the weatherization assistance, we went ahead and implemented this system to conduct what we call LIHWA in Oregon, because we have a LIHWAP already with weatherization. In any case, we have served roughly 2,000 households. We have not used the payment matrix. Instead, this has been something new because we have not had statewide water assistance, water data throughout the state yet. We decided to allow a payment upon all arrearages. So we have been not only helping to avert disconnection for households, but we have also been reconnecting and taking care of arrearages. Payments, the minimum payment has been $100, which is typically about 1 month's bill for households here in Oregon. We've also seen upwards of a $9,600 bill, which was one of the largest ones. So it really has varied throughout the state, but it has allowed us to gather some information on how to create a payment matrix if we do have the possibility of continuation of water assistance. As for the program stand-up, this was very difficult because we do have over 2,000 water vendors throughout the state, and 900 of those are eligible for the program. So we took a statewide perspective and initiated at least 10 different seminars and webinars with any possible connection to water and wastewater assistance or any of their vendors to try to collaborate and understand a statewide perspective of the need and how best to implement the program in the parameters that we were provided. So it's been a journey and we're still not there yet, but we do still have funding and we are continuing to do our best, and we have all 17 agencies making payments as of this week. I do have with me Jamie Bennett, who is one of our rural water vendors.
Hi, Jamie. I think you might be named Jason on your screen, but that's actually Jamie. So, so for those of you who are viewing on the screen, we'll get perfect. Thank you. Thank you, staff. All right. So with that, I will actually then switch over and I'll put Jamie on the spot if she could introduce herself as a water service provider and kind of just describe how your organization partners and participates in the program, and what, if there were any changes that you had to make to either your policies or your systems in order to participate in LIHWAP.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. We have Mosher's unique small. We have 490 residents, so it's to run the utilities. It's burdensome administratively. I'm the only employee, of course. I think everybody's suffering that shortage at the moment with the growth, and our position geographically is we're experiencing a lot of the people that can afford to participate in the housing market, which is exacerbating the gap between the folks that can afford to participate on council and the folks that are struggling with their monthly overhead. So the things that we did to change, or the necessary changes we had to make, educating the council. I did a rate study showing that there wouldn't be a huge impact because I want to adopt policies longer term with this supplementary program. And we don't have the administrative prowess to administer the economic relief program directly. So we partnered with the charitable organization Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. They have the ability to do qualitative evaluation and still keep some privacy. We did an intergovernment agreement with Mid-Columbia Community Action and subrecipient paperwork. But what we had to do to make it truly successful, because I was also not able to read the meters properly, keep up with the billing, honor our code, state of emergency for the COVID, but also I partnered with the city of Hood River is 5 miles away, even though it's in a different county. They took over the administration of the billing and meter reading for our water and sewer utility, which stabilized that revenue first and foremost. That was amazing for 3% of the revenue when we were probably losing 15 through inefficiencies and meltdowns. The biggest roadblocks were probably, not acknowledging that 40% of our population doesn't speak English as a first language and doesn't feel included as it is. And the biggest issue is our 82 of our 220 utility bills are in a mobile home park where you own your home but not the property. And the water is paid through the space rent, and then indirectly they don't receive the benefit because they can just raise the rent. So finding an opportunity to reach those households and creating a policy to still allow them that offset, it took a little extra work, but that was where our children that go to school and our families that work primarily lived. So looking for that kind of redirect of other utilities to assist them with. And I think it's the small rural communities that struggle with the resources and have great intentions. And then it's your people that can afford to be on council that just push things along so quickly. It's hard to meet the true needs. But partnering with the agencies is the best advice I could give any agency ever. And that's our experience. We've helped, I think we've redirected 100% of our COVID funding to this so far and reserved the remaining balances. And of course, our capital projects are suffering like everybody else's, but
Amy, you gave us so much information. I was taking down some notes, so I'm probably going to follow up with some questions because I think that a lot of grant recipients or smaller water service providers could gain a lot of knowledge from the different solutions that you just talked about. So I'm going to come back and ask more questions. So, but let me open it up for Sarah, if you can jump in. I know you've had experience on the local level, and just kind of if you could talk about how your program works directly with the water service providers, especially any of the rural communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that we ran into was finding who is the best point of contact at the water companies. And I believe the water companies also had, it was easier once we had that point of contact, who to communicate with on the bills, on the payment process. So we do a transmittal process at the end of every day where we send information to the water company on whose water bills we're assisting with. So there's definitely an education piece there on what the transmittal means, what's the payment process, and then also on the city side, them figuring out, how's the billing process going to work with this pledge that's on their account, and then also any credits that would be on there to help them from disconnection. So how is that showing in their system so they're not getting disconnected? Our processes that they had to go through and figure out. But once, we came together and we really was able to share on our end what the process looks like, what best fit the company or the city, and how we could work together to make it work. It was pretty seamless. And then as far as the policies and procedures they had to change, I know they had to go through the procedures of getting it approved by the city council. The city of Lawrenceburg didn't have a problem with the vendor agreement, but we did have a couple in our area that it took time to get them on because of the meeting dates or the language in the agreement that really just had to be discussed and reviewed more.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I've heard a common thing around this education piece. I think it's new for both, our social service agencies or community action agencies to be in this water space, and then for the water service providers to work in this like low income space. Some of it is new for all of us. So that education piece, I think we're hearing a common theme. So I want to know if Ohio, if Megan, if you wanted to add anything to of how you are transactionally working with water service providers and what that looks like.
So yeah, so all of our local implementers are working directly with the water companies. And I think one thing that was helpful in Ohio was that we also administered some of the other stimulus funds, and some of those were carved out to be able to provide water assistance. So we started laying the foundation pretty early to be able to do this water assistance piece of it. Another sort of incidental thing that I think helped us here in Ohio is we also had to carve out funding to be able to create and implement a water wastewater infrastructure program. And that also landed in our agency and in my division. And so I think that having our name tied to that as well also helped providers to have a comfort level with what we do. And we're really strong partners with our Ohio EPA. And, I think that leaning on who the water companies know and who they already are familiar with. So our partners at the EPA sent out the information about our water program to providers when we were first started. They sent out our state plan for us to get feedback. And so I think that, when you hear things from folks that you already know, already have a relationship with, that sort of help to extend that relationship to a new agency who was coming to the table. So that was another thing that I think was helpful here in the state of Ohio.
So your local entities are working directly with these water service providers too,
Yes.
Which is helpful. Great.
Yep.
All right. Bernadette, do you want to add anything around working with the water service provider? I know Pueblo Zuni operates their own system, but I think you might have other water service providers that you have to work with as well, if you want to give us some information about that.
Actually, we only have one water service provider, which is the utility department. And so they've been really cooperative and amenable to all our processes. They kind of had an idea of how we administer the home energy assistance program. And so they were very cooperative when we determine eligibility. We would send like an authorization list, and they would, make sure that those water connections were maintained. And so that was really helpful. And they also helped us with providing us customer account histories of the arrearages. And so that helped us actually determine the maximum amount here for our water benefits. So they've been really cooperative. We had no issues with the vendor agreement. We reviewed it with them, that they signed it, so that's in place. So everything's working out well. They even helped us with outreach when based on their customer listing, those that had arrears, they would let them know about the program and then told them where to apply and such. So they've been really helpful on our end.
That's great.
And generate revenue for them. So
yes. Well, that's great. That data sharing helps both ways, which is, I think, really essential. That's great. All right, so we will go on to the next question, and this is for everyone on the panel. So if you guys want to just all jump in, I'll call your space out. But what roadblocks did you face in launching your program, and any specifics around in the rural communities? And then how did you address them? So if we could have, let's see, how about we have Kentucky start us off? So if you all from Kentucky want to jump on, just talk about roadblocks and especially in the rural communities.
I think a lot of our roadblocks went back to that education piece of the daily processes with the water assistance with the companies. Assisting our families with water is something we hadn't done before. So enhancing that communication of, which families were paying, how much, and how that's affecting the billing process. It really took a minute to make that smooth. So it wasn't uncommon that we were in contact with our water companies 3 to 4 times a day just to make sure certain accounts everyone was matching. So when we talk about it really enhancing that bond between us and our communities, we stay in contact pretty frequently. And I'd say that took a couple weeks to figure out that, and really having that one person to contact made the communication very straight. And once we were able to smooth that out, it went pretty well.
That's great. And from the state level in Kentucky, I think we have Chris, if anyone else wants to jump in. Were there any differences between operating within more of the urban city areas versus some of your rural communities?
Well, at the state level, like I said, we contract with Community Action Kentucky, who subcontracts with the 23 agencies. The only, the only challenges that has, basically been reported falls back on, kind of what Sarah said is, the smaller vendors, their systems maybe not being able to be an updated, system, and, to apply those credits or the pledges and so forth. But I think, the agencies have worked great with the vendors and everything and been able to get pretty much all of those problems resolved. So I think in the smaller areas, it was more as much their system as anything, or just not understanding how the bills read and how the processes work. But they have worked closely with all of the vendors and resolved all of those issues.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to bring up Joy and Jamie from Oregon. I know that Jamie, you mentioned the issue around renters and the mobile home park, and it's Joy from Oregon was actually one of the first states to come to OCS to discuss the issue with renters and try to work out what policies in place to help support renters, especially with mobile home parks being a more affordable option for low-income individuals. So Joy, if you want to talk about that from like the state level, and then Jamie, you can talk about how you actually were able to work that out. That would be really great.
Of course, thank you. And I'm interested to hear Jamie's response as well. So the issue that we came into was mainly found in the difference between LIHEAP and LIHWAP or LIHWAP. So we have the ability to create payments directly to clients who either as a reimbursement statement or whatever the case with LIHEAP. Now with LIHWAP, when we are not able to create direct payments, we can make payments on behalf of clients for landlord or to landlord accounts, as long as they go directly to the utility. So for instance, we've had a couple of these come up where it's a single family unit and the household rents from the landlord's name is on the bill, but the tenant receives the bill at the house and pays the bill directly. So that's a general case where we are paying on the landlord's account, but it's taking care of arrearages and it's wiping off a bad debt. So if there's no credit that, not that they would, but in the case where a landlord would go pull that credit off, there's no possibility of doing that because it's wiping out a bad debt. As far as apartment dwellers, mobile home parks, any situation like that, that's where we were running into the issue of, without the ability to pay the tenants directly who are qualified, how do we pay upon a landlord's account if the landlord is current, but the arrearage is held between the tenant and the landlord? There's not necessarily any books that shows that. There's not necessarily an accounting system or something that we can use that has legal teeth behind it to be able to say, here is the exact justification of how much they owed, what they paid, who they paid, and here's the credit on the bill. There's not anything that we have been able to find, especially with multifamily households, apartment dwellings, that there's a really hard, there's a very big internal risk We conducted an internal agency risk and audit for that, but there's so much unknown that we've tried to find a way that we can work around it, but we're still hitting roadblocks because of the very specific articulated statute language.
Thanks, Joy. And Jamie, if you could talk a little bit about the mobile home park policy that you guys have worked with and how that has helped you be able to serve those households.
Yes, this is probably, we probably wouldn't tick the perfect paperwork box with our approach, but we do equivalent dwelling unit billing, and because I have all the information, I know exactly what the utility bill is in each mobile home, even though it's metered as 1 meter. And we have a very specific, their home owner occupied. And with the financial evaluation being done by a third party, that's somewhat of an internal control. They know the households that are struggling. I was able to work with the manager of the facility. We also didn't necessarily approach people in arrears because we know how hard it is to get caught up. There were several that were already in arrears, but the folks that we knew that were struggling and qualifying in some areas, but maybe not others, or they had their utility bill paid through a different program, but we knew that this extra, $85 or whatever the number may be, could allow them to then pay their internet bill or their heat or whatever. We were able to work a portion with the owner or the agent of the mobile home park and have them internally offset the rent for that month, I guess, effectively. If there were 11 households, then we gave them that funding, and in turn, those 11 households paid slightly less base rent, I believe is how that went.
Great. So then the household got the reduction on their rent, which ultimately went directly on benefit for the household. It's very impressive with your one-woman show over at the water service provider company.
Oh yeah, at the only employee for the whole city. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Well, I really appreciate you being able to give us some insight to how you're able to do that.
Really helpful. Thank you.
So Bernadette with Zuni, would you like to describe any roadblocks that you guys have had implementing this program and how you were able to work around them or change items?
I would not say roadblocks, more of like challenges, internal challenges. We definitely had the full support from our governor and tribal council, our finance department, and the water service provider. I think that's one of the challenges was limited staff. I think Jamie mentioned that the one woman met. So wow, that's wonderful, Jamie. All the work that you do. Because we wear many hats, we service a lot of programs under here, and so just a limited staffing. So we just had to do some shifting around, and I think we had about 3 staff that help with eligibility, and then we had one keeping track of the data that we have to report. And I think one of the other minor challenges was just developing the vendor agreement, but thankfully, we have administered the home energy assistance program for so many years, so we kind of just use what we had in for LIHWAP as guidance to help implement this program. So other than that, we haven't had much roadblocks where we're doing, as much outreach as we can to reach out to families, and we'll be sending out flyers to the customers there so that we, for those that haven't applied yet, they can apply. And I think one of the other things that we need to work on is streamlining our home energy assistance and our water application, streamline it so that way we can provide this benefit service to our families.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to move to the next question on what is working well and what advice would you share? And if we could think of what's working well with our water service providers and in rural communities, and any advice that you would share to other grant recipients or other water service providers to increase success for LIHWAP. And let's have Ohio start with this one.
Sure. So I think that my biggest piece of advice would be to communicate and build relationships. So that way, if a payment ends up not coming through that you thought was going to come through for a household, you know who to call, on both sides, so that, households don't end up in a shut off situation. So I would say that, you can always streamline applications, you can always streamline processes, but, having those sort of on the ground relationships, I think really helps to make programs run efficiently and effectively.
Great, thank you. How about Kentucky? Sarah and Chris, if you want to talk about what has been successful with water service providers, or elements of the program that you'd want to share your advice.
Yeah, I definitely agree that, the relationships on the ground have been our biggest pro to this program. The referral process from the water companies, they know the contacts at the local offices, and they're able to refer those families that are struggling for assistance. And often they'll qualify for multiple programs, so you're helping them in more ways than just one. So having those relationships and being able to do that outreach in the community has definitely been the biggest pro for us.
I agree. I think the communication, it goes from the state level to the local level to the vendors. Well, I still don't have my video on. It's just everybody working together to meet the client, the client's needs. And without the communication, this program wouldn't have, I believe, has been as successful as what it has been. So I agree with that piece wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Okay, how about Oregon? Joy and Jamie, what's been the biggest success?
I would say the biggest success has been getting municipalities such as Mosier involved in a program. And you're going to laugh, the city of Portland, which is probably the only city from Oregon beyond the capital that you hear about nationally, trailed behind city of Mosier. So we actually had smaller cities on board before the city of Portland, and the logistics at the county level and at the larger city level were at times more difficult to maneuver than with the smaller municipalities, where their board is their mayor and that's all they need to have sign off on. So I think honestly, being able to hear the rural voice over the urban was a huge success.
Jamie, what about from you?
That's really touching, because most of Oregon is, rural secretly and geographically very spread out, and the systems are very difficult to manage. And it's, the incomes are very, disproportionate. It is categorically the partnerships. I always tell, McClemmy Community Action Council that facilitates the disbursement and the economic standards to meet the criteria, and the city of Hood River, the city that's nearest to Mosier, that we would not exist as a city without those levels of support and just having the same goals. And educating council is always.
Well, it's really exciting to hear that that Oregon was able to reach the rural communities. We know equity is such an important aspect of this program and really any social service program. So to have partners in the rural areas is really, really essential. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Bernadette with Zuni, what about for your program? What do you think is the biggest success and some advice that you would share?
Okay, so there's actually two. The one definitely that has worked out well for us is the including categorical eligibility into our plan, because we don't have that for the home energy assistance. And that has allowed us to expand and increase eligibility for more households. And so we plan to implement that for our energy assistance model plan that's due in the next month. So that has helped us. The other one is investing in an online application platform. We use Jotform, and the use of our local radio station and social media, our program, and our tribal newsletter to help with outreach. I think that's also helped us tremendously in reaching out to our community to let them know about this service that we have available. But going back to our online application platform, I was looking at our data, and out of all the application we received, 87% applied online and 13% submitted paper applications. So for any tribal entities out there, I really encourage you to invest in the online application platform. Like I said, we use Jotform, and it works out well. It's small annual subscription fee, but I think it's worth investing, because it helps, for a fact they can apply using their telephone, their tablet, their computer. And we even have people come through our office and we help them apply through Jotform, because it also gathers some data of what type of housing they live in, or the gender applying, and what service they're applying for. So that really helps us with capturing the data. So yeah.
Great, thank you. I'm really excited to hear about the categorical eligibility with LIHWAP moving forward too. I know it helps it helps with the administrative burden and also just the burden for households. We want households to be able to come in, get all the services they need with one application. So that is great. All right, so I think we have one more question before I open it up, and we do have a few pre-submitted questions and some live Q&A. But one last question is, if you had to suggest one thing to others in your role, hopefully none of you are leaving but if you had to tell your future staff one thing about the program in one sentence, what would you say? And let's start with Sarah.
One thing about the program?
Yes.
I know a lot of the water bills, especially for 1 month, it seems like a low cost that should be affordable, but even that water bill for a family and getting assistance on it, especially, we've seen so many families that have large past bills being past due from COVID. So even these smaller bills, having assistance with it really does go a long way. And knowing that that basic need is secured can really elevate them in other areas, employment, education, and promote those areas. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Chris, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think she pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer. Okay, how about Megan, Ohio? One thing you would share to others in your role?
Yeah, I think that I would share that, programs like these can help households stay in their housing. And if you have clean water, the most basic necessity of life, you can help maintain secure housing. So this program is vital to keep going and to implement.
Thanks, Megan. How about Joy?
Recommendations for anyone in this position, I would say communicate often, early, and as much as possible. There really wasn't anything anything such as too much communication, because it was always changing. And as the program developed, some parties dropped off of the communication and had to come back on, and they had to be caught back up. So it's often frequent, as much communication as possible.
Great, thank you. And Bernadette, how about for you? What's one thing you would suggest to others in your role?
Okay, so first of all, everybody would need to understand that water is definitely precious that we get from Mother Earth. So everyone should have access to water, no matter where they're at. So I would let our staff know that anything is possible with the right amount of effort. And other thing is partnerships make programs such as Lywop a success. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I like that. Water is precious. So, all right. So we're going to open it up to I think we have a few pre-submitted questions and then some Q&A that has been submitted. So Rachel and Mitch, if you can kind of answer any questions. I think Rachel, if you can answer this one. What are some challenges in Lywop administration that relate to its temporary nature, meaning that it's not a permanent program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, to reiterate, all funds for this program must be obligated by September of next year. So we have a little over a year to go. And I think one of the main challenges that are faced, especially by small rural water providers, is the fact that it is temporary. And so they don't know if it's worth it to invest any additional resources or funds or time and effort into the program if they're only going to be receiving payments once. So sometimes we've heard of water service providers who have had to update the systems they use for their accounting or make changes to a few policies or procedures. And, you know, as we heard, sometimes that involves having to go to town council or city council and just taking the time to go through those processes for something that's only happening once. We've heard some people who are hesitant about that. And I will say, you know, what we're doing on our side at OCS is we are trying to elevate success stories, share successes of the program, and really encourage folks to participate and take the time to do this, because the ability to help households who are behind on their bills is really important. And we very much appreciate the people who are taking the time, who maybe are, you know, a one-woman show like Jamie, to make sure the program work for them and their households.
Thanks, Rachel. I have another one for you if you want to stay on. So we heard someone asked, did I hear correctly that we must have a signed vendor agreement in order to receive payments for Lywop funding?
Yeah, so most of our grant recipients, so again, the grant recipients are the states, territories, and tribes who are implementing the program, and most of them do require that you have a signed vendor agreement with them in order to receive payments on behalf of households. And again, this is really done to protect all parties and meet with some requirements in our legislation in ensuring that benefit amounts are applied properly to household accounts and that the payments are being made and services are being restored as expected.
And just to add to that, most grant recipients are doing written agreements. It is not required by OCS, it's recommended. So some have other policies and procedures in order to get water service providers participating in the program. All right, so we have a couple of questions for our panel. So the first one is Kentucky. So if our Kentucky representatives can come on camera. And their question was about the two different payments. So did I hear correctly that an applicant received two benefit payments? So can you talk about your crisis? And I think it was a subsidy payment. I'm not sure what you called it, but if you could describe the two.
Okay, yes. Kentucky, it is broke down into two type of payments. We have the crisis benefit that is for applicants who are already disconnected. They can receive up to $800 in crisis benefits to get their services reconnected. The subsidy benefits, you can apply for up to $400 for a total benefit amount of $1,200. So yes, it is kind of broken up into two different types of services, but you can apply for one or you can apply for both, depending on what the need is.
Sarah, is there anything that you would add to that from the local perspective?
No, that is what the program is, up to 800 for those that are in those crisis situations. And then the subsidy program, which is a one-time benefit, up to 400.
But once you reach that 1,200 maximum benefit, that is, you know, the maximum amount allowed.
Sorry, I was on mute. And as we know, Kentucky has spent their funding. So unless there's new funding for this program, that will not change at this point. All right. So we have a couple of questions that I would like each panel, each state and tribe to answer. So it was around the reimbursement. So can someone share what a LIHWAP reimbursement invoice looks like? And then someone asked another question, but it's also related. How does a water provider accept payment? For example, Jamie, are you able to take vouchers and receive monthly payments for clients served? And the reason I'd like all four different entities to just talk about this is because it varies depending on how this grant recipient has set up their program. So Jamie and Joy, if you could answer this first. So how does the LIHWAP reimbursement invoice look like, and how are you able to accept payment?
Does Joyce want to go first, or?
So Jamie, I can go ahead and answer the first part of the process. And then if you want to answer the process about when you receive it. Okay. So at the Community Action Agency, when the client goes in to apply for assistance, they go through the process of determining eligibility, providing information, and then we have a data entry system that, to my sorry about that, my earbud died. We have a data entry system that, to my knowledge, I don't know what it stands for, but it's called OPUS. I don't think it's an acronym for anything. I think it's just a name, but it provides printed reports that shows the household characterizations, demographics, the makeup, the income information, and then the utility information. And at the bottom of that includes the LIHWAP program disclaimer, which is the release of information from the Community Action Agency to the vendor on behalf of the client, releasing that communication line to talk about the client's account. That program, the commitment, the payment, is then sent over on a very summarized basis over to the vendor, showing the application number, the amount, the household's account number, and then the any other details like please reconnect immediately or any notes specific to the account. That's what the Community Action Agency sends over to the vendor on the client's behalf. Jamie, go ahead.
Excuse me. We're unique, of course, because it's a tiny town, but Mid-Columbia Community Action does send after the vetting process, that check goes directly to Hood River. And sometimes the information makes it on there and sometimes it doesn't. And it's kind of back to the relationships and communication component for working backwards and figuring out whose bill it was.
And I'm not sure if you're able to answer this or if any other state or tribe want to answer, but are you able to take vouchers and then receive monthly payments for clients? And I know this really depends on how the grant recipient has set up their program, but if you could talk a little bit about that.
I'm not aware of the voucher program yet, but I'm curious to explore it. I eliminated shutoff notices and fees 4 years ago. I think that this is all tied to housing and stability, and very few people see the difference $100 makes. That was very helpful, and very few people got behind. I'm curious about the voucher program. We would categorically create a system. What's difficult for us is I'm trying to mimic everything Hood River does because they handle our billing for us, but they're very progressive with all of these types of programs. So I usually follow them with best practices to the best of my ability, and then make concessions where I have to protect our unique circumstances in our tiny town. We did also do a percentage of our general fund for direct community support for people that have deal fatigue trying to even get the help that they need.
Thank you. So I actually just looked at the time and realized we are almost done. So I don't know if everyone will get to answer that question, but I do know that it really depends on how the grant recipients have set up their program, if it is a one-time payment or a multiple payments. That would go to the vouchers and then monthly payment question. But for those of you still on, thank you so much for being with us. To Joy, Jamie, Sarah, Chris, Bernadette, Megan, I don't know, did I miss anyone else? Thank you so much. And I'll turn it back over to Christina to close us out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. I just want to highlight how enriching I think this conversation was. I want to thank our panelists. Some of the things that I heard here is that people are struggling, and that this program helps to secure an essential need that can elevate families in other areas. And I heard that benefits range from $500 all the way up to $9,600, which can make a huge impact. Also that because this is a new program, education and providing information to all parties that are involved is really helpful and goes a long way. Also that it might, you might consider including associations and other organizations, and the relationship building is really important. Communicating with the cities, with municipal groups, and also with other local counties or neighboring counties have helped to provide solutions. And so the last thing I want to mention for everybody is that we are having office hours. If you are interested in connecting with LIHWAP staff and talking more in depth about what participation looks like or what's happening on the ground for your local water service provider organization, or if you are a city or a municipal group or a local agency, please feel free to sign up for office hours. Those are scheduled to occur July 26th from 3 to 4, and then another session on July 29th from 12 to 1. We will send a registration link to follow up with this session to all that have registered. And just as a reminder, the office hour sessions are meant to be for small groups, and participation is capped at 15 so that we can really dig in and explore the questions that you have and talk about potential solutions. So with that, thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will go ahead and close out. Thank you so very much. Bye.